In 1941, Adolf Hitler stands on the Baltic coast of Germany and watches the largest weapon ever built fire for the first time. The shell weighs 7 tons. It leaves the barrel at twice the speed of sound, climbs 12 kilometers into the sky, and lands 29 miles away. The crater is 10 meters wide and 10 meters deep. When the test is over, the Krupp family presents the gun to him as a personal gift, free of charge, no invoice. A tradition from a 400-year-old steel dynasty, the first piece always goes to the state. Hitler calls it his steel fist. It weighs 1,350 tons. It stands nearly 4 stories tall. The barrel alone is 106 feet long. It requires 2,500 men and 5 weeks just to set up. It can fire once per hour, and it will be used in combat exactly once. 48 rounds. Then it is blown apart in a forest by the people who built it. This is Schwerer Gustav, the largest cannon ever constructed, and the most expensive weapon ever built for the least amount of use in the history of war. The gun was built to destroy one thing, the Maginot Line. France's fortress wall was the strongest defensive fortification in Europe, 7 meters of reinforced concrete over steel armor, stretching from the Swiss border to the English Channel. The French had spent a decade building it specifically to stop Germany from ever invading again. In 1936, Hitler walked through the Krupp steelworks in Essen and asked if they could build a gun big enough to punch through it from beyond the range of French artillery. Krupp said yes. By 1937, fabrication started. The gun would ride on 80 wheels across 2 parallel sets of railway tracks. It could not aim left or right on its mount, only up and down. To aim it horizontally, you had to move the entire 1,350-ton weapon along a curved section of track. It traveled disassembled across 25 rail cars, stretching 1.5 kilometers long. It fired 2 types of shells, an armor-piercing round weighing over 15,000 pounds, capable of punching through 7 meters of concrete, and a high-explosive round weighing over 10,000 pounds, able to reach targets 47 kilometers away. Each shell was heavier than an African elephant. Hitler wanted it ready by March 1940. He did not get it. Because the gun was late, the war it was built for did not wait. In May 1940, the Wehrmacht invaded France through Belgium, bypassing the Maginot Line entirely. The most heavily fortified wall in Europe, the very thing Gustav was designed to crack open, was simply walked around. A flanking maneuver through the Ardennes made the strongest fortifications in existence irrelevant overnight. The largest gun in history had missed the only war it was built for by an entire year. By the time it was finally ready in 1941, France had already fallen. Krupp had fired roughly 250 test rounds during development. They presented the finished gun to Hitler on the Baltic coast, and then charged 7 million Reichsmarks for the second one called Dora, named after the lead engineer's wife. The free gift was a one-time courtesy. So they found it another war. In February 1942, Heavy Artillery Unit 672 reorganized under Colonel Robert Boehm, with 1,420 men. Their mission was to haul Schwerer Gustav across occupied Europe to the Crimean Peninsula and use it against the Soviet fortress of Sevastopol. 25 railcars crawled south toward the Black Sea. When the train arrived, 4,000 men spent 5 weeks building special curved tracks, laying embankments, and assembling the gun with 2 giant gantry cranes. 2 full anti-aircraft battalions stood guard just to keep it from being bombed. 500 men were needed to fire it. By June 5, 1942, it was finally ready. It had taken longer to set up the gun than many entire military operations lasted. The siege of Sevastopol was one of the most brutal engagements on the Eastern Front. The Soviets had been defending this port city since late 1941. General Erich von Manstein's 11th Army had already failed to take it once. Now in the summer of 1942, the Germans threw everything they had at it. Operation Storfang, Sturgeon Catch. The Luftwaffe flew over 23,000 sorties in June alone, dropping 20,000 tons of bombs. German artillery fired another 46,000 tons of munitions. By the time the city fell on July 4th, only 11 buildings remained undamaged. Into this, Schwerer Gustav fired its 48 rounds. On June 5th, it opened with 8 shells against coastal batteries, then 6 more at Fort Stalin. On June 6th, 7 rounds hit Fort Molotov. Then came the shot that justified the gun's entire existence, if anything could. 9 shells were directed at a target called White Cliff, also known as Ammunition Mountain. It was an ammunition magazine buried in Severnaya Bay, 30 meters below the water surface, protected by 10 meters of reinforced concrete. The 9th armor-piercing round punched through the water, through the earth, through the concrete, and detonated the magazine. The explosion sank at least 1 vessel in the bay. Over the following days, 7 more rounds supported an infantry assault. 5 hit Fort Siberia. 5 more struck Fort Maxim Gorky. Then the ammunition was gone. 48 rounds total, and the barrel, which had already fired 250 test rounds, was completely worn out. It was swapped for a spare. The original was shipped back to Krupp for relining. 1 month of combat. 48 shots. The gun would never fire again. After Sevastopol, Gustav was dismantled and hauled north for a planned attack on Leningrad. It was positioned 30 kilometers from the city. Fully assembled, fully operational. The attack was canceled. The gun sat through the entire winter from 1942 to 1943, doing nothing. Its sister gun Dora was sent to Stalingrad. It arrived in mid-August, was declared ready to fire on September 13th, and was immediately pulled back when Soviet forces threatened to encircle the position. Dora may never have fired a single combat round, 2 of the largest weapons in history. 48 rounds between them. After wintering near Leningrad, Gustav was shipped back to Germany for refurbishment. It was considered for the Warsaw Uprising of 1944, but the rebellion was crushed before the gun could be prepared. The weapon that took 5 weeks to set up was too slow for a fight that lasted 63 days. There was supposed to be a third gun, Longer Gustav, a 52-centimeter bore and a 43-meter barrel designed to fire rocket-assisted shells 190 kilometers. Far enough to hit London from the French coast. An RAF bombing raid on the Krupp factory in Essen destroyed it before it was finished. On April 14, 1945, 1 day before American troops arrived, the Germans blew up Schwerer Gustav to prevent capture. 8 days later, American soldiers found the wreckage in a forest 15 kilometers north of Auerbach. Twisted steel and shattered bogies scattered among the trees. Soviet specialists examined the remains that summer and transferred them to Merseburg. After that, the trail goes cold. No museum piece. No surviving fragment on display. Dora was destroyed at Grafenwohr on April 19, 1945. The debris was scrapped in the 1950s. Nothing remains of either gun. For the same resources Gustav consumed, Germany could have fielded roughly 24 Tiger tanks, each one independently mobile, each one capable of engaging targets within minutes of arrival. Instead, they spent 10 million Reichsmarks on a weapon that needed its own railway, its own construction crew, its own anti-aircraft defense, and 5 weeks of setup to fire once an hour. Hitler called it his steel fist. It was more like a monument to a war that was already being lost the moment it fired. Schwerer Gustav was designed to crack the Maginot Line. The Maginot Line was bypassed. It was sent to Sevastopol instead. It fired 48 rounds and destroyed its own barrel. It was sent to Leningrad. The attack was canceled. It was sent back to Germany. The war was lost. It was blown up in a forest by the people who built it. There is no piece of it left. The heaviest mobile artillery weapon ever constructed exists only in photographs, in test-firing footage watched by Hitler and Speer, and in the crater it left at the bottom of Severnaya Bay, where an ammunition magazine 30 meters underwater ceased to exist because a 7-ton shell fell out of the sky at twice the speed of sound. That is the story of Schwerer Gustav, the largest cannon ever built. 48 rounds, then scrap. If you found this story worth your time, subscribe. We cover the machines that were too big, too late, or too ambitious for the world that built them.